Hey guys, welcome back. If you're a returning listener or watcher, and if you're new, please make sure to subscribe to the show and leave a comment on YouTube or social media to let me know what you think. Coming up today, we have Roger Joseph Manning Jr., best known for his work in the band Jellyfish, of which his newest band, the Lickerish Quartet, features three members, Roger, Tim Smith, and Eric Dover. And Roger's also done session work for some of the biggest names in the business, including David Bowie, Pink, Adele, Blink-182, Ringo Starr, and he's worked as a keyboardist with Beck for a long time. And we had a really interesting discussion about the music business, why Jellyfish wasn't bigger, and the struggles of trying to grow a project in today's climate. And it's just a great conversation. So buckle up, grab something to eat or drink, sit back and relax. Unless you're driving, of course, then keep your eyes on the road. Here we go. Top of the something. Top of the Pops? That's like a reference to something that I it's something famous and I'm lost on it for some reason.
But that's been the biggest televised hit parade show in England for the last 40 years. I don't even know if they still have it, but
oh, okay.
Video footage that was circulating on VHS and probably is now all over YouTube. Of all kinds of famous bands from I think primarily the 70s. I don't know if it started in the 60s. If it did, it was late 60s. Through the 80s, and I think it's still going. But yeah, its heyday was definitely the 70s and 80s, and there's lots of amazing footage. And this is probably some T-Rex performance or something, and that's a shot of the audience.
That's awesome. So were you able to see that stuff in the 70s and 80s, or you're saying you looked at the archived stuff later?
Yeah, I looked at the archived stuff later, and I got this picture just off the internet.
Okay. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So Lickerish Quartet. This is great stuff. I'm excited. I've heard, now is there 4 songs or 5? Because I got sent 4, but then there's another song that just came out like a week ago called Sad But True. Is that part of this EP?
It has nothing to do with us. I don't know what that is. Sad But True. That doesn't.
Really? It's not even the Lickerish Quartet? What? It's on your Spotify. That's so bizarre.
I'm not sure about that.
So you guys have the 4 songs are Fortunately, New Days, You All Alone, and In the Meantime then?
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, take me through the process. I'm sure you probably told this before, but just like in terms of writing and recording it, like first of all, what inspires a lot of these kinds of songs? Is it just everything or specific focus that you were going for on this album or this EP?
No, at the beginning of 2017, we decided to get together and write, and just for fun, and we did that. It was a big experiment. A lot of us had not worked together in a musical capacity for a while, so it was going to be good to see each other as friends and see if we couldn't get some fun musical ideas out of it, which we did, which naturally led us to want to record them. We reached out to a drummer friend of ours, Jeremy Stacy, who we assumed would be very excited to, be the 4th member of this group, essentially. And he was, but he lived in England. So, but by the end of 2017, I think, we were able to get our act together enough to begin recording. And then between everybody's busy schedule, we completed 12 songs over the next 4 years. Obviously, COVID slowed everything down, but by the time COVID hit in the spring of 2020, we had tracked most of the music. I should say 75% of the music. And then we decided, let's release these as EPs, not as a full album. It was going to be easier to finish 4 songs and just kind of disseminate into that, power pop world for our fans, the tunes. So we set out to complete them a little bit at a time. And you're now receiving the 3rd EP, which we literally just finished recording and mixing this year. That's the final statement.
I love it. It's great. I'm so terrible at describing music, but I would call this kind of like, I mean, it's similar to all your other stuff, the Jellyfish and everything, but it's like Beatles meets 80s pop, maybe with a modern twist. Is that a good description?
I mean, we like all that stuff. So, I mean,
Yeah.
they're gonna hearing it what they hear. When we write songs and then they pass the test, so to speak, it's really about, do they meet all of our needs? So do the songs have a strong melodic content, and do they lend themselves to vocal harmonies and a lyric that we're excited about? That's interesting, but fairly progressive, but not too alienating. I mean, we want our songs to be, our songs inevitably end up being a bit sophisticated for the average pop fare, but not so heady and hyper intellectual that we alienate everybody. Otherwise, I'd be probably doing a progressive rock podcast and not, you know.
Right. No, that's what's so interesting. I mean, when you listen to, it's like somebody had described it perfectly. Like either people love you or they don't know you. There's nobody that's like, oh, I don't like this kind of music. This is terrible. Like nobody can listen to the songs of Jellyfish or Lickerish Quartet and go, oh, this is bad music. I don't think I've ever heard that. So, I mean, cause they're very poppy, but why is it more underground? I don't get it.
Because in pop's evolution in the last 50 years, rock pop, whatever you want to call it, or now you could call it hip hop pop. It's obviously gone through all kinds of evolutions, and at different times, different versions of that were popular. So where you had psych pop in the 60s, and it turned into kind of classic blues rock in the 70s, that kind of turned into new wave synthesizer pop in the 80s. It was still all 3.5 minute, very catchy, dancey, kind of teenage background music. But, Pink Floyd 1967 has nothing to do with, the Human League 1983. But it's teenage music. It's teenage pop music with catchy melodies and hooks and lots of fun arranging and musicality. All that stuff was very, very musical. And now it's continued to evolve into Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift and lots of Lil ... hip hop rapper people. And okay. But we're drawn to, and what naturally comes out of us is what you've heard over the years through Jellyfish, Imperial Drag, TV Eyes, Lickerish Quartet. Those acts are those musical offerings we've had, and certainly our solo records. They're not too far from each other. We're poking our heads into slightly different realms, but they would all be sitting next to each other in the same record collection for somebody who was enjoying that.
For sure. Now, do you guys you must have like kind of a cult following there must be, or I should say, I know you have the cult following, but do you have a following of like big musicians that are fans? Cause you've worked with some of the biggest names in the business. Do they pick you out personally because they're fans of you, or how do you get those jobs? Like, how do you get the jobs for David Bowie and Beck and all these big time artists?
That mostly comes through the producer who's putting the recording session together. So there are a lot of producers and engineers who've been fans of certainly Jellyfish over the years. But occasionally those artists will ask for my services as a keyboard player specifically, or somebody wants to write with me, or what have you. But it mostly comes through a producer who is aware of my particular skill sets. I've been on 5 Morrissey records at this time, but he never asked for me personally. It's come through 2 different producers. Now, once he got familiar with me, then he said, "Oh, can we have Roger back? Is he still available? I'd like to bring him in on a portion of this record or whatever." And then the producer might also have me try arranging strings on a record. Morrissey would be like, "I didn't know he arranged strings. I like his keyboard playing." So it's just like, it's almost like you have to like sell yourself and hustle your name in that world. If Jellyfish or any of these musical offerings got a lot more popular, you would maybe have people saying, Taylor Swift wants to write with Jellyfish, or what have you. But it was never, we broke through at a certain MTV time for a certain generation, and that was great for the 4 years it lasted. But it made some noise, and it's all good. But it never reached those other tiers of notoriety. That's all I'm trying to say. Which
is weird because for me, like, it's easier to listen to a Jellyfish or Lickerish Quartet song than some of the stuff that is more popular, like Pink Floyd. Like, I like Pink Floyd, but some of that stuff is like harder to. It's more prog rock. It's harder to listen to. It's not as easy on the ears as, say, like a Jellyfish. Like, immediately you're like, oh, this is so catchy.
Well, that's a good example to bring up. Pink Floyd obviously has had tremendous success in their 20-year career or whatever. I mean, now they're selling legacy stuff, but it was really about those 70s and 80s records, and they are more progressive, but also they're more kind of stoner. A whole lot of people like to get high and chill out and veg out to some easy kind of psych music.
Yeah.
And Pink Floyd has been that very thing. Even for people who don't party a lot and get high, it's almost like they can feel like they are when they listen to Pink Floyd music. It provides that soundtrack, and that it provides that ambience and that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Jellyfish, if I was going to play devil's advocate, yes, there's catchy melodies and sing along, but it's almost more heady and intellectual in a Steely Dan kind of way. At the end of the day, we could talk and intellectualize it for hours. I think had more people been exposed to Jellyfish, and had we had a chance to do a third or fourth record, I think that eventually would have happened, again, to a greater degree. Our audience would have simply continued to grow, right? I mean, Pink Floyd's audience really doesn't start kicking into overdrive till you hit Dark Side of the Moon. And if I'm not mistaken, that's 4 or 5 records in.
Mm-hmm.
And,
so isn't it more marketing and stuff? Because I know for me, like, I never heard the name Jellyfish until Eric Dover joined Slash's Snake Pit. And then they're like, yeah, Eric Dover is the new singer of Snake Pit, ex-Jellyfish. And I was like, Jellyfish? I was like, what? I've never heard of this band. What is this? And, like, I don't think I heard your music until years later. Because I would, like, why would I buy a Jellyfish record if I've never heard it on the radio? I never saw it on MTV. And you could, back in those days, if you didn't, that's the only way that you'd, like, learn of music.
Correct. And the fact of the matter is, we were on college radio and on a lot of MTV, but it was only for about a window of a year and a half. We didn't cross over to pop radio, but we did quite well on college radio, which bands could do, and they could sell records. MTV helped, definitely, but often it came through repetition. Right.
Yes.
I mean, you could look at Radiohead and go, well, the first album made lots of noise. It did. And it sold through a little bit, kind of put them on the map. But they weren't the Radiohead that everybody knows now as a household name.
Mm-hmm.
The second album bumped them up a little bit more, but it was still kind of in that college indie rock world. Then by the third and fourth record, that's when it starts getting way more colossal, and their fan base starts getting just out of the kind of the college kids, high school kids, starts going to all kinds of age groups, a lot more countries. It's just more far reaching. Well, that arc to get them to their third or fourth record where they're like on the cover of Rolling Stone, on the cover of Spin, everybody knows about them who might not have known about the first 2 records, even though the first 2 records did fine. That starts happening by the fourth album. And again, we're talking about a 90s band. It's
Mm-hmm.
different band. But they're a good example of that. Had they broken up, had the record company dropped them, yeah, they would have had some notoriety and fame off the first 2 records, but they wouldn't be the household name that is Radiohead now.
Right. And I think, when I was a kid, I remember in the 90s, like Radiohead, it was the song Creep. That was the song they played on the radio. That was the MTV hit and it was, you're right, it's like the repetition. And then you don't realize, like, later they come up with these albums that, like, what's the one, OK Computer, that everyone, Rolling Stones, like, this is the greatest album, one of the greatest albums of all time. But a lot of people just know Creep.
That's right. And Creep was like, you could call that Stepping Stone 1.
Yeah.
And Belly Buttons, that was Stepping Stone 1 for us. Well, Radiohead and their record company continued to capitalize off that, and they didn't break up. Right? I mean, they after their second album did even more business for them. Then they just came with the home run, which was OK Computer. Jellyfish broke up. We couldn't do album number 3. That might have been our home run.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like King's X. It's like, I feel like that's another band that's similar to Jellyfish in the sense that a lot of when you ask musicians, like, what do you listen to or what are your favorite new bands? I remember that was the one that was like, everyone was saying King's X, but they never really broke huge, but they still have a pretty big following. They can tour and they can play shows.
Yeah. And they were, a lot of people kind of refer to them as like more of like the metal edged hard rock Jellyfish. Cause they kind of attracted more of that audience, and that's what they started to build on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a lot of marketing, though. I really like. Were you guys like? Because I grew up in Seattle, and we had 2 rock stations there. We had like the hard rock, and then we had the alternative rock. Yeah. Did they play you on the alternative rock there? Do you know? Were you played on alternative rock stations?
Alternative rock is the only arena that Jellyfish was played on. We never broke through to top 40 regular radio.
Yeah.
So we got lots of play on alternative college rock radio. It was, referred to. I can't speak specifically to the Seattle market, but
because
I know.
I don't remember hearing. I feel like I would have, because now when I listen, I go, oh, this is the shit that I love now, and I would have loved when I was 15. But I don't remember hearing it on The End. That's what the radio station in Seattle. That's like where they first played Nirvana and stuff like that. A lot of those Seattle bands.
Yeah. But Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, they all broke through to that next tier of more commercial pop rock radio. So there's nothing wrong with the college radio. That's a great start. That's a great entry point. They went past that.
So wait, remind me again what happened then. So it was you guys did 2 Jellyfish records, and then did the band break up, or the label dropped you, or both, or?
No, we broke up. The label fortunately did not drop us. They were talking about it. And maybe even if we'd stayed together, they might have dropped us before a 3rd record, because Spilt Milk did not sell as well as Belly Button did. And I know for a fact, the president of the label, Phil Corderero, was getting pressure from his colleagues to drop us. And he refused to do it.
Wow.
He had that much faith in us. Now, again, unfortunately, we broke up and ended it. But he stood by us when a lot of his colleagues were like, no, they aren't selling enough. The 2nd record has gone down from the 1st. That's not good. We don't have time for this. We got to focus on the next Lenny Kravitz record. I mean, that was very real.
It's such a weird business. But now it's like you don't have to worry about getting dropped from a label for the most part. I mean, you'll always be able to make music.
You'll always be able to make music, but the odds of making the amounts of money and doing the amounts of commerce that you could back then are completely 1 in a million. Now, see, back in the day, right or wrong, the record company, the major label, that they were the loan shark.
Mm-hmm.
They would advance you millions of dollars, and then you would pay that back through sales, touring, right? And then there's a certain point where you're no longer in the red, you're in the black, and then you actually start making money. So you remember back in the day when you hear a band would go gold?
Yeah.
Okay, so more or less, just to give you an idea, so gold was 500,000 albums.
Right.
If an artist sells 500,000 albums now, it's a goddamn miracle, and they're a big, big deal.
Yeah.
But back then, even if you were on college radio, like Radiohead, we could name lots of bands right now. If we looked back at the 90s chart that were just on college radio, some of them sold gold. Between that and a little bit of MTV play and some touring. So basically, when you hit gold, that's when you made so much money that you could pay back your loan from the record company. And then if that keeps going, now you're actually making money. So when you'd hear a band like Black Crowes would come out, their album sold 1 million, 2 million. Well, that safe bet, they've paid back the loan, and now they're actually putting money in their pockets.
Right. Okay. So that's a
But there
good
were a lot of
indicator.
bands,
Yeah.
yeah, there were a lot of bands like Jellyfish that didn't quite clear gold. So, for example, our
So do
first
you still
album,
owe money then?
correct,
Shit.
but I don't have to pay it because we got dropped.
Oh,
So
so if they drop you, it's just the deal's over.
Say 10 Jellyfish albums sell next week, if people can find them. They're
Yeah.
not printed anymore. But those 10 records still don't go to me because we still owe money.
Oh, what if like, I mean, just hypothetically, I know this is crazy. What if like 1 million Jellyfish records sold? Then would it eventually go back to you, or does it still go back to the?
Well, it would eventually go back to me, but you'd have to convince the record company that it's worth pressing them up.
Yeah. Well, what about the Spotify plays? That still just goes to the record company?
Until you recoup.
Okay. And you would probably never recoup in your lifetime on that one.
No.
No. But like Lickerish Quartet, that's all you, right? You guys, or are you going to label that?
No. It's all DIY. So, yes. So we pay for our own production costs, manufacturing costs, right? We have to pay to print up our own vinyl. And then we sell X number of vinyl. And then we have to, just like a record company, we have to pay the people that helped promote it, distribute it, helped us manufacture and do all the coordinating, ship it. And then did we make any profit? And if we did, we split it 3 ways. And typically, if any money comes in, we've just been putting it back to the recording process. Pay for our mixing engineer, all the other people that help, some press, addition. You just keep forwarding it.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody's getting rich here, but we've had a lot of fun making these records.
Yeah. Well, because you don't have to, right? Because you have the Beck stuff and all the big name artists that you work with. That's like your bread and butter for money. Now this is just like you can just do whatever you want, which is kind of nice, right?
Yes, but I'm a freelance musician, so I'm constantly hustling work. Some jobs pay well, others not so well. The music business in the last 30 years, although there continue to be people who become superstars and make a ton of money, music business as a general money-making enterprise continues to go downhill because of files.
That's
There's
sad.
no vinyl and CDs being sold. There's no product being sold. The live touring business, that pretty much has stayed the same.
That hasn't grown?
Not to my knowledge. In fact, tickets keep getting more and more expensive.
Well, right. So, well, in terms of money bringing revenue, isn't the revenue grown from that? Because that's how you guys have to make your money now, right?
Right. But what I'm saying, as far as I know, and I'm no expert on this.
Yeah. In terms of audiences.
Costs to go on the road.
Yeah.
Are generally the same. Hotels, gasoline, all whatever the overhead is for a band to go on the road. And then you're only making profit based on whatever the ticket price is and sales. What I'm saying is that part of the business would seem to be generally unchanged from 20, 30 years ago. Whatever level you're at, you play a certain size club, theater, stadium, and then there's money that comes in from that after your overhead is paid. So that hasn't changed versus bands don't sell CDs and vinyl anymore and cassettes. There's no product. In fact, they're trying to make money off files, which is a joke because you can't, because people share files. So the music business as a whole. So even the record companies have had a harder time making money off of artists they sign. So, like, licensing is a way that artists make money now, which means if you get your music in film, TV, or commercial, that's so small. Right. And the number of bands have increased. So back in the day, if Atlantic Records had 50 acts, right, and trying to get their acts on a movie, well, you only had 50 acts to worry about. Now there's 50,000.
True.
There's some crazy statistic, like 60,000+ songs from everybody from Taylor Swift to 1 million people whose names we'll never know, because they're making music out of their mom's basement on the computer. Every day on Spotify, 60,000 new songs are released.
Dang.
You want to get one of those in a movie or a car commercial? Good luck.
Yeah, that's competitive for sure. Well, you can also sell.
It's more competitive than it's ever been.
But
It's
selling merch is also, isn't that a big way to? I mean, I had one big guy say that we're just we sell T-shirts and we play the music, the jingles to sell our T-shirts. Like that's a
that's
major part of the revenue.
sure, but that's absolutely, but that still means your music has to reach as many people as possible, so they can go, oh, I like this song. Now I don't have to pay for the song because I'm subscribed to Spotify, but maybe I'll buy their shirt. Versus the new band or the band who's even been around for 10 years who doesn't have 1 million plays. They've got 30,000 plays. They're going to sell less T-shirts.
Yeah. Well, it seems like on that stuff, a lot of that is like you're making money off the diehards. Like if there's got to be a select group of people that are diehard Jellyfish, Lickerish Quartet fans. They're going to buy anything you guys put out. You could put out the Lickerish Quartet coffee mug and they're like, I'm on it. Like I'm getting that.
That's correct. However, figuring out how to grow that audience is the eternal conundrum for not only us, but any band in our situation, past or present.
Right. And you guys all have your other stuff that you're doing. You're like you said, you're a freelance musician. You're doing all this other stuff. This isn't you don't have time to put everything into this.
Correct.
That's hard.
I would love to put all my time and energy into original music for fans, both with the quartet and continue to do my solo records. And I'm currently working on another solo EP right now. But I don't get up every day and do that. I work on it a few days here this month, a few days here that month, because I'm continuing to hustle as a freelance musician. You mentioned Beck earlier. Well, he's one of the artists I've worked with who's fairly known. He's continuing to do business. But my involvement with Beck is only dependent on what Beck's career is looking like in any given year. He may tour a lot. He may not tour at all. He may record a lot. He may record hardly at all. He may take a year off. You know what I mean? It's all over the place. So I can't go, or Beck may change his sound from album to album and not need my services as much as he might need another gentleman or person's service. Right? Because he's always, his sound is not one dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
Follows him. Sometimes his music has a lot of keyboard activity. Sometimes he uses my background vocal skills. Sometimes that's not necessary. So I can't bank on anything. I'm always free floating and putting myself out there, trying to make sure people know about my services, my skill set, blah, 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 blah. I have people I work with now who are now discovering Jellyfish stuff. They're like, I didn't know you did that. Well, that's great. Well, we should try to do something like that next time we work together or whatever. So it's this constant education process, because people's attention spans are 10 seconds long because everything in the world is fighting for their attention. So I've been very, very, and as dire as that can sound, I've been very, very blessed over the years and continue to be. It is what it is. This is stuff they don't teach and they can't teach in music school. This is get out in the real world, start falling down, picking yourself back up and learning from your mistakes. And why do you have success in this business? Because you don't stop and you don't give up and you just keep going. And then at the end of the day, you can only do what you do. I roll out of bed in the morning, and as you've seen, I'm kind of predisposed and enjoy, and my skill set is kind of writing the songs in the style that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I don't get up out of bed in the morning and naturally, very organically write stuff like Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift. I could, if I put my architect cap on and analyze all the components to their music, I could certainly do that. But it would actually wouldn't be natural for me. That's not how I think.
Mm-hmm.
Nor do I have any interest in thinking that way. In fact, I don't. It's hard for me to even relate to it. They're speaking a language that the machinist and architect and music school graduate part of me can absolutely dissect and understand, and I can reverse engineer, no problem. It's not an extension of my soul at all. The extension of my soul is what you've heard. And what what people will bring me in on session recordings or whatever.
Yeah.
As a keyboardist or arranger.
Do you like, obviously you like writing the music, obviously you like playing the music. It sounds like obviously, I mean, clearly most musicians probably don't like a lot of the business stuff. What about the recording process? Because you guys recorded this on your own. Are you into the gear and stuff? And like, I got to use this guitar and this through this amp and all this? Or are you just like, I just want to play music. Somebody else do that.
Twofold. I mean, I enjoy when other people engineer for me, take care of capturing the sound into the computer or onto tape. I'm fascinated by that, and I like being informed by it, so I can make intelligent decisions and comments to the people doing that, to the engineering side of that. And simultaneously, I am fascinated by all kinds of musical equipment, past and present, including software. I mean, I have a huge vintage keyboard collection because I love the history of keyboards and the giant sound palette that the last 50 years of electronic keyboards and acoustic keyboards can provide for me as an arranger. But I'm just as fascinated by guitar pedals and all the sounds a guitarist can get, and what different plugins do to different sounds when you've got audio in the computer. But I don't go super deep on that. In fact, I'm fairly ignorant about a lot of things because I'm more interested in just the art of the songcraft, and how I can create better melodies and grooves and feels and riffs quicker and in a more. I'm continually fascinated by that process and less fascinated by the other processes.
Yeah. Okay.
But you kind of have to pay attention to all of it, because you got to be able to talk intelligently about it. Otherwise, you're going to be at the mercy of other people's crappy ideas. You don't know any better. You don't know how good a stereo guitar sound can sound if you get stuck with an engineer who doesn't do that very well. You can't comment on it intelligently until you hear somebody else's record and go, why do their guitars sound much more bigger and present and fantastic than my guitars do? It's basically because of who engineered it.
Oh, that's interesting. Cause like some of these bands that, some of the newer bands will sound kind of retro, like the Black Keys. I'm like, how do they get that? Like
that's completely
sound. Yeah. No, it's really cool.
I know those gentlemen, and they are. Oh,
you do?
Very smart. They're very aware of what they're doing, and they're very studied. When they started out, they may have had other people taking care of the technical engineering part of it.
Yeah.
They have learned that world inside and out, and are very in command of what they want and what they don't want. And they've spent a lot of their wealth buying up vintage equipment to help them make it sound that good, or that way that you described.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Cause that's one of those bands that's like, you're like, okay, they're doing it. They're like a big rock act in 2022. That's hard to do, to play arenas as a newer act. They're not a vintage like 70s and 80s band. They were formed in what, 97 or something like that? Like
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they sound great. You said keyboards. You have a vintage collection of keyboards.
Yeah.
Do you have one of those? What do you call the guitar type keyboards from the 80s?
Well, they didn't really have a name other than you could strap them on.
Yeah.
So my friends
Can you play that?
My friends and I used to call them strap-ons, and then somebody referred to them as a keytar, which I think is a much funner and cooler name.
Yeah.
A keytar. I've owned Keytars. Moog put out a Keytar in the 70s, 80s called the Moog Liberation. And I've owned that in the past, but I've never performed with them. I don't enjoy performing them. They're awkward, and I think they're just too damn goofy for me, and an extension of my personality. I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah.
I actually used them. We performed with them in the Moog Cookbook, which was kind of it was a serious musical act, but we did a lot of comedic music. And when we performed, it was to make people smile and laugh. So we put those on, and many people smiled and laughed.
I just remember when I was a kid, my dad came home with one of those one day and he gave it to me, and I was like, I could never freaking play the thing. I don't have any musical talent, but I just thought it'd be funny. I always thought they were cool looking, and they were like kind of comical, but I remember getting one as a kid in the 80s. I wish I could have learned how to play it. But yeah, so you mentioned the Moog Cookbook. That was the one where you guys wore the spacesuits, right?
Yeah, That was my partner, Brian Kehew, and I. That was a duo we had during the Imperial Drag days. It was
Okay. I love Imperial Drag too. Did Daft Punk, did they rip those spacesuit thing? Did they rip that off from you? Or is that just a coincidence, you think?
I have no proof of that, but do you know the French band Air?
No.
So the French band Air was an instrumental group. They had a little bit of vocals. It was mostly instrumental. They came out in the late 90s, same time Daft Punk did.
Okay.
That was when a lot of the world was paying attention to French pop music that was had. They were kind of having a renaissance. A lot of cool and a lot of dance stuff, but Air wasn't really dance. There was a lot of synth oriented music. Anyway, we became friends with them. In fact, to the point where we toured, me, my friend Brian and Moog Cookbook and some other gentlemen, we were the backup band for Air, who were French guys. When we toured the States and toured Europe in 1998, promoting their first album, which was on Virgin Records. It did very, very well for them. Anyway, so we got to know them very well. And they told us that the Daft Punk guys did not put their masks on until we played Moog Cookbook for them.
Really?
Now, let me be perfectly clear. The Moog Cookbook was not the first band to do that. There were bands in the 70s that wore spacesuits. We didn't know about them. We found out when the internet started getting more popular, you could do research, and YouTube started having all these videos. We discovered, oh my God, there was this disco band from France in the 70s they were called Space.
Oh.
Look them up right now. They wore spacesuits with space helmets.
Okay.
Now, we didn't, they never did any business in America. We would have never seen their records. So we didn't know. So I'm not accusing Daft Punk of ripping us off. I'm just saying it was in the air, and the timing is very interesting. And the guys in the Air said they weren't doing that until Moog Cookbook came out.
You may have inspired them in some ways. Yeah.
Something like that.
That's pretty cool.
I love that band, and that's fucking compliment if they were inspired by our space outfits.
Well, there must have been a lot of bands that the Black Crowes loved you enough to take you on tour when you were in Jellyfish for 6 weeks. It was like during the peak of their success, right? And you guys had not really broken. I think you had just come out, and they were like, yeah, we're taking this band. That's a huge compliment. There must be tons more stories like that, right?
Oh, that was a goddamn miracle. I mean, we are indebted to those guys to this day. I'm still friendly with them. I don't see them very often, but I've spoken to Steve Gorman in the last year, Chris Robinson, his brother. That was an incredible gift to come into contact with them. World Party had us open for them. Tears for Fears had us open for them. There have been scattered things here and there in the brief time Jellyfish toured. Wonderful compliments from people we admired.
Yeah, what was it like touring with Tears for Fears? Because you grew up with that band, like you were fans of them as in the 80s.
Big time. It was great in that not only did I enjoy the music they were still making at that time, or at that point they'd broken up. It was just Roland, just one of the two original members. And got to tell them to their face, thank you for all the great music. Thank you for inspiring me wanting to be in this business at all.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I heard you say, speaking of inspiration, so you were going to music school. It was next to the Lucas Art and Film School, or was this all one school combined?
No, it was at USC, and I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the clock. I have to make sure I'm off in 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, sure. Just 10 minutes. I'll make sure you're off. Yeah. No, I just remember you saying that the people from the film school part of that had the best ideas and they had the best parties, and that was more inspiring because the music people were all classically trained and very by the book, whereas the film people were more free, I guess.
You nailed it. I mean, nothing wrong with the musicians at the USC Film School. It's just they were a little bit more by the book, a little more uniform. And meanwhile, the film school, which just happened to be physically located, all of its buildings next to the music school. And I had roommates who were in the film school. I found I was hanging out at their parties. They were the ones putting together college rock party bands. They were the ones turning me on to music that I didn't know about. They were the ones turning me on to film and visual stuff that I didn't know about. they were the ones being hired to make low budget videos for local music bands. So it was just like, wow, it's way more interesting over here with these freaks. My mind's being opened up more by them than anybody at the music school. That's all.
Yeah.
So it's just
whatever happened to all
I
those.
was very thankful for that.
Yeah, that's cool. Did any of those guys go on to make cool movies or TV shows or anything like that?
Oh, both of my roommates, who were roommates of mine for at least 3 of the 4 years I was in college, have gone. One is basically focused much more on television. Steve Turner, he's been with HBO forever. I mean, he was Martin Scorsese's right-hand man on Boardwalk Empire 3 years ago.
Nice.
His career list of projects would blow your mind. And this was a guy like, I go to parties, get drunk with, and wish we could have the courage to go talk to that girl standing over in the corner of the room. And we were total, like, just art nerds together. Another roommate became to this day, is one of the most successful screenwriters in Los Angeles. His name's David S. Goyer. He did Batman Returns. He did a lot of the superhero movies. One of his main jobs is he's kind of like this script emergency repairman. So say a film is in Australia, or in New Zealand on this big budget production, and they're filming according to the screenplay, right? But they've run into some financial or logistical situation that they couldn't afford seeing. Well, you're halfway through the film. You can't just stop. You got to fix the challenge. The challenge may involve rewriting some of the screenplay. Like, how are we going to get ourselves out of this mess? It's got to have continuity.
Right.
We need to bring in the professionals. So he may get flown into New Zealand to start talking to the director, the heads of the studio. Here's the assignment. Here's what I think we should do. I'm going to go away for a week and see if I can't write you guys out of this shitstorm that you've gotten yourselves into. I don't have to tell you, there's not too many script surgeons in Los Angeles, who are equipped to do that.
That's got to be a tough job.
Yeah. So he's really risen through the ranks of his profession in a way that none of us could have foreseen back then. And, interestingly enough, that gentleman was the guy that spent money on the most clever, eccentric, weirdo records when we were all in college. He loved, like, Australian pop records and a lot of underground stuff that none of us knew about. And he would buy these records and we'd like, what the hell is, what is this? And he would turn us on to a lot of music.
That's awesome. I love that kind of stuff.
A musician.
That's funny. Yeah, that's like me. I can't play music, but I love music. And it's funny you bring up movies, because I think the same thing with like Lickerish Quartet and Jellyfish. There's a lot of like mainstream stuff that I'm like, it just sounds the same. And then when I hear that kind of stuff, I go, oh, and it's the same with indie movies. Like, I'll watch movies and I go, oh, every movie's the same. And then I'll find this amazing indie movie that I'm like blown away at the plot and the acting, and no one's heard of it. And it's so frustrating.
You have to dig. I have to dig harder than ever now to find new music that inspires me.
Yeah.
But, and it's worth it when you dig.
Yeah, there's so much out there. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do the podcast, to expose people to all the good stuff that they're not aware of, but they should be.
Thank you in advance.
Yeah. My massive audience of like 200 people or whatever. But
the podcasts keep growing and they get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, that's the goal.
People love these private environments.
Oh, I love doing it.
Belong to a club.
Yeah, I want to have in studio in a few years. Eventually, that's going to be the goal. Now, are you guys going to tour? I think I asked Eric this, and he was like, "Oh, I don't think so, because it's just hard to tour as the Lickerish Quartet." Or would you do some one-off shows? Because I think that's the thing now, is like people do these fly-in dates, and I think somebody told me that they don't even bring their own drums, so they can fly in and they just use the drums at the casino.
Well, that certainly, and with drums you can do that. Keyboards is a different story, in guitars.
You could fit a keyboard on a plane, right?
Yeah.
Not a carry-on, but you could check it.
But so the only thing that you're talking about that would prevent Lickerish Quartet tomorrow from doing even like a mini tour of the States.
Yeah.
Say 10 shows in major markets.
I'll come out and see you.
It's all money. So we would have to have some machine involved that says, if you play this small club in Ohio for X amount of people, I can guarantee those ticket sales. Then you'll put this much in your pocket, which pays all your expenses to rehearse, not only yourself, but the other band members you're going to have to pay to be in your band because you're only 3 people. Get yourselves out to this show, put everybody up in a hotel, pay a crew to help you with lug all your heavy equipment. I mean, you start getting this logistics list that is crazy. And at the end of the day, you go, guys, we're actually going to make some money. We're going to go out, we're going to rehearse for, a month, do the tour, blah, blah. This is going to be about a 3-month thing. This much money is going to come in, or should come in, this much money is going to go out. Well, we already know it's going to go out. That's guaranteed. Cost versus overhead. 3 months. At the end of the day, we're probably going to make money. You're probably going to go home with this. You divide that by 3 people, blah, 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 blah. You probably go home with about $1,500, maybe $2,000 in your pocket if you're lucky. And we go, it's $2,000 worth 3 months.
Oh, that'd be for the whole 3 months?
Right.
Oh. No, maybe more
if we're lucky, we probably would lose money.
Well, maybe a better option would be either playing some of those giant festivals where there's like 100 bands or something, and I think they pay everybody well, or some like the Black Crowes.
They pay people well
at the top.
And then towards the bottom, you're lucky to be even getting invited.
Well, damn it.
So I'm not saying there's not ways to do this. For example, if somebody came to us tomorrow and said, I'm putting together the Beach Boys cruise, and I want you guys to be one of the opening acts on the Beach Boys cruise, and it's going to be whatever it is. All I want to know about, now, obviously that would be fun to play for Beach Boys fans who might know Jellyfish, want to hear pop music, want to hear vocals, harmonies. I already know the audience is going to be cool. They're going to be into it. That's great. All I really want to know is, what is my guarantee for the 3 of us? Because then that's going to tell us the promoter, that's just going to put it all together, the promoter for the pop cruise, the power pop cruise, is going to be able to guarantee us X amount of dollars. And then I look at Tim and Eric and we discuss, here's all the work we have to do to take these very involved songs that we've given the public and try to recreate them live, including rehearsal. Dude, I can't even remember the lyrics to my own song. I'm doing 20 million things. So yeah. I'd have to spend time memorizing my lyrics, right? So there's going to be a time investment, all that stuff. And then me and Eric and Tim go, the promoter's guaranteeing X amount of dollars in our pocket. We go home with X amount of dollars. Is it worth all the work and time for that amount of money?
Gotcha.
That person hasn't shown up, and there's no power pop cruise going out as far as I know, and they're not knocking on our door.
Well, I have faith. I have a feeling that something's going to either the new Black Crowes type of band is going to want to take you on the road, or a festival. Something's going to happen. I have faith it's going to happen. I'm going to see you guys live. I know it. But I know you got to get out of here. So my last thing, what's that?
I love your faith.
Yeah. Because you guys are so good. Is there a charity that you want to promote here? I always promote a charity at the end. Is there, or just, some quick shout out to a cause that is near and dear to your heart?
I don't have any specific, but for God's sakes, everybody pay as much attention politically as you can, particularly if you're like me from the past, you didn't pay attention to politics, you didn't give a damn.
Right.
The country is up for being sold out, and we have to pay attention to this. And the best way to this day, obviously we can protest and make our voices heard, peaceful protest, but voting in the midterms coming up, and then voting locally. Anytime something's happening locally, in town, city, state, now more than ever, you basically have no choice. If you don't participate and get your voice heard, the country will be sold.
Yeah. Okay. Register to vote. Let's get people to do that. Cause I think it's always weird when I see these election results and they're like, yeah, only 40% of the country voted. I'm like, what? Why would you not vote? I don't understand. It's so bizarre, but okay.
That's what I said when I found that out.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, well, thank you so much. I know you got to get running. So I appreciate you doing this, and everybody get the new Lickerish Quartet stuff. It's amazing.
This has been great, Chuck. Thank you for your time, and thank you for promoting us on your show.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Roger Joseph Manning Jr. He's one of those creative geniuses that is really good at expressing himself and explaining his outlook on things. Some guys are just quiet geniuses, but Roger is just so interesting to talk to. Definitely the type of guy you'd want to talk to at a party, and I wish we had more time, but hopefully we can have him back on. So check out the new Lickerish Quartet, their music. And if you haven't already, make sure to do a deep dive and check out some of his old stuff, Jellyfish, Imperial Drag, his solo stuff. And make sure to follow Roger and the Lickerish Quartet on social media. And then check out my podcast page on Instagram or TikTok for short clips. And I'll post the full episodes of the show on Facebook and Twitter. Or if you just subscribe to the show on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you listen, you can cut out the middleman that way. So your downloads, listens, likes, comments, shares, all that stuff that helps support the show and helps the show grow. We don't have a large corporation backing us up right now, so this is all just grassroots. So any help you can give us to help the show is greatly appreciated. Have a great rest of your day, and remember to shoot for the moon.